I'm going to begin today by talking about the power that comes with sharing your story. You've heard me say and encourage you many times to use your voice, share your stories. When we share our stories, that is ultimately how we connect with people. Those connections are not possible if you don't share a little bit about yourself. Just think about it for a minute. Think about what you know about your friends and what you love about them. Then think about what connected you to them in the first place. It was likely commonalities between your stories. Well, the great news is you own your story and you get to share it any way you want because you have lived it. Well, today was actually a former student. My guest today was actually a former student in my mentorship course. I knew nothing about her other than the fact that she was interested in improving her public speaking skills, which is why she signed up for my course. At the end of my course, all my students are required to deliver a 5-minute speech live on the Zoom call on a topic of their choice. And I always encourage them to pick something about their story because writing and sharing about what you have lived doesn't feel like public speaking. You are simply sharing your story. My guest today did exactly that, live on our Zoom call, and she had everyone in my class on that call in tears when she shared. I had no idea what was coming our way when she started speaking, but wow, did she impact us all. Her story is powerful and emotional, and I want to share it with all of you in the inner circle today. Her name is Diane Quartly, and her career path has included writing, speaking, and sharing her incredible story of overcoming grief with a significant loss of her young son. Her book, About a Blue Angel, speaks to the tragedy and her ability to move through the most difficult period of her life to date. Diane now facilitates energy workshops and uses her powerful psychic connection in her spirit and soul coaching sessions. She is positive and a knowledgeable medium who taps into the energy and vibrations of loved ones who have crossed over. Diane Quartly, my goodness, you have moved from being my student to a guest in my inner circle today. I'm so thrilled to have you here.
Well, thank you. It is a pleasure.
Dan, I want to begin.
It's great to be here to share my story.
I want to begin with your story because that is what impacted all of us. So take us back to what life was like for you before tragedy hit your family.
Well, I was married at the age of 21. My husband was 20, just 6 months behind me. You know, we both grew up in the same community and had dated once when we were in grade 10 and then sort of went our separate ways and met again when we were older and started dating. And, you know, life was really good. We started a family right away. I had my first son when I was 23, just after my 23rd birthday, and then our second son came along just shortly after that, and then a third son came along after that. And so I was a busy mom, and life was good. Our second son, we had some issues that we'll get into, I'm sure, and difficulties, so we had to deal with that. But other than that, you know, we were living life and doing our thing and had a happy little family. And
you're an entrepreneurial family, aren't you?
We are, very much, very much. I come from, my family were farmers. My dad was a farmer, and you know, I grew up on a farm 30 miles out in the bush, I say. My husband always teases me that he saved me from the bush, but I don't think I saved him just as much. So, but his family was farming at the time as well. But then we moved into a space where we had some opportunities to do all sorts of different businesses. So we started doing that. And yeah, so we are entrepreneurs, and we're always looking for the next great thing to do and be passionate about.
We can relate, and I'm sure all entrepreneurs feel exactly the same thing. So, take us back to, you mentioned challenges with your son and some of the health issues he was facing. Tell us about that.
Okay, so our middle son, Travis, was born with a genetic disability. So it's called trisomy 9 with trisomy 9P with developmental delay was what it was called. And it is hereditary. We did not know anything about this until Travis was born, that it did come from the family background on my husband's side. And you know, he was this beautiful little baby that was born, and we were all really happy to see him, and he looked fine when he was born, but we quickly found the challenges. And with the developmental delay, it was basically, it wasn't like a disease where it progressed and it got worse. Everything that we could teach him, he was able to accomplish, but he was just delayed in his development. Mm-hmm. The doctors told us he probably wouldn't hold his head up, but it took him 8 months, and he did that. And, and then they said, oh, but he probably won't sit or walk. And, it took him a year to sit, but he did it. And then, I think with us being so young and just going through the motions, we never ever anticipated that he wouldn't do these things. And I think that, being an energy worker now, I totally believe in what we believe creates our reality. Yes. So it was a good thing that we weren't really worried about all these things. We just thought, okay, well, what's next? What can we fix next? How can we help him next? And I think that just sort of, progressed us through his early years. He did have some feeding issues, and that was the biggest issue, where everything that he ate for the first while would pool at the back of his throat and then reflux out his nose. So that could be for a young mom to see everything he eats coming out of his nostrils and having to deal with that. But what it did is it created a lot of chest infections and a lot of pneumonia. So his first 3 years were touch and go. He was sick. Well, the first year, the doctors just didn't think he was going to make it, but he struggled through. He's a tough little guy, and we had to do, and we just sort of went with the flow of things. I think we had a lot of confidence in our doctors and thought, well, what's next? What can we do next?
I wanted to ask you about that, how you navigated this situation as a family, because yes, you have 3 children, you're a young mom, and he's surpassing all his markers, but still, that couldn't have been easy.
It wasn't, but like I said, I was oblivious to, I think, the amount of trauma we were in. I think I just assumed and had so much faith that he was going to be okay, and that we had good doctors that were going to take care of him. And, we were, at that time, we would go to the Glen Rose Hospital every 3 months for appointments, and they would help us for the next thing. He didn't hear well. We didn't know the extent of his hearing loss. He didn't speak. He needed glasses. There was a lot of delays. He wore a diaper till he was, until he was 6, and because his kidneys were very, very delayed. So there was things that we just had to deal with. But he was this amazing little boy that, he didn't need to talk, because we always knew what he wanted, and he was just so easy to be around. And he was such an old soul, I think, that everybody just gravitated to him, and we just expected him to do well. And he eventually did very well, and got through the pneumonias was the hardest part. But worried how that all happened, but we were connected with the Shriners Hospital out of the States, and they helped us fix his feet. Because his feet, the connection, when he was born, his toes were sort of recessed on the back of his pads of his feet. So can you imagine not having toes to kind of balance? So they were, and so, we had to have his feet sort of reconstructed. So that whole surgery he went through to be able to walk properly. Before that he wore braces. But it was always just, I think we were busy. We were creating this life for ourselves, and Travis, that was just him.
So,
And so
Diane,
sort of had the faith that, oh, well, this is our life. And this is, we never thought about it much. I don't think, until after the fact.
how did his brothers react to him?
Oh, well, it was funny because Travis is the middle son and Devin was our youngest, but I got pregnant with Devin really quickly. They were actually the same age for 3 weeks. So I was pregnant with Devin as we were finding out all these things about Travis. So when Devin was born and then Travis was delayed in his abilities, it was like having twins. It really was. They were very much, in the same place at the same time. And Levi, our oldest son, he is an exceptional kid. He just, it was just who he was. And Travis loved him. Travis would always hang out with Levi and just crawl on him and play with his hair. And he would always just be around him. And Levi was so gentle and just sort of, oh, that's Travis, and that's the way it was. So he's always been a very caring person. Devin is a little outgoing and, Travis would go to him when he wanted to play. So they both kind of had a balance there that worked really well for them.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
Beautiful to
well.
hear how the family surrounds him and just, doesn't see him any differently. I want you to take us back to that day. What was happening in your life? And I say that day because I know you will explain it for us.
Okay, so when Travis was 6 years old and we had gone through a lot of the Shriners Hospital had helped us a lot at that time, and Travis had finally got to the point where he could walk with actual Batman running. I have to say Batman running shoes because they were so important to him. Levi had some Batman running shoes that Travis always wanted to wear, but because Travis had braces on his legs, we had to get these sort of more industrial kind of boot to put the brace into that it would fit into. But at the end of the day, we would take the braces off and rub his little feet and take the boots off. And then he'd go put Levi's Batman running shoes on and kind of walk around with them. And he didn't fit him well and whatever. But so when the time came that Travis, we had his feet fixed, the first thing you want to do, of course, was put on these Batman running shoes. And they fit at that time,
Oh.
6 years old. So, but through this process, the reason I'm telling this is because Travis would stand beside things for balance, even when he didn't need to, because he was always used to having to, hold on to things to balance when he didn't have his braces on, and even sometimes when he did. So August 22nd, 1999, Travis was 6 years old. We were at our lake lot up by Slave Lake, Jussard, and we were camping with some friends who had 3 kids at the time, really good friends of ours, and we had a great day. We woke up in the morning, decided to go fishing, and went down to the dock. Now their oldest son, Eric, has cerebral palsy and had some issues, and when we were down at the dock, Eric had a kind of an episode and fallen and hit his head. So I ran back to my camp, grabbed my van at the time and drove around to pick them up. Down there, and Tracy, his mom, and Eric, we loaded into the van. And as they came around the van, it was really interesting. I know now why, but as they came around the van to get into my driver's side, Travis was standing at the door. And just with his hand on the door, which was kind of odd because he never actually put his hand on the door. He would stand by bumpers of cars and things for balance, but he would just sort of as a, I don't know, just as a comfort thing, not so much to touch it, but he was touching the door. So I thought that was odd, but I just picked him up and gave him a snuggle and he giggled, and I handed him to Arlen, who was there, and I jumped in the vehicle, went to the hospital because Eric needed stitches. He had fallen and bumped his head. Okay. We get to the hospital and we were waiting for the doctors to come in. We were in the emergency room in High Prairie where I live, and coming in, there's been an accident. And I hit the chair in the room. I just knew that it was Travis. And I sat down and I just said, it's Travis. And I knew the nurse that was working that night in Emerge. And Jan looked at me and she goes, I don't even know who it is or what. I know nothing about it, just that the ambulance is coming in. But I just knew. So I went to the waiting room and we waited, and we waited for the ambulance. And when the ambulance got there, or Jen came out and said to me, yes, it's a young boy from Jussard, but I still don't know who. And I said, I know it's Travis. And then she came back later and she said, yes, they radioed and said that it is Travis. So I was already at the hospital when this happened. So take you back, what happened at the lake lot, I guess, from what I've been told, some other friends of ours were moving a shack into their space. So everybody's kind of over there helping them and everything. And one of my best friends at the time, who was moving in, she jumped in her vehicle to move her vehicle out of the way to make room for them. And Travis was standing behind the vehicle.
Oh my God.
She backed over and felt a thud. Everybody saw it. And she had ran over Travis, pushed him over and ran over him, his whole body. So they called the ambulance. Arlen, my husband, had to do CPR and on him until the ambulance got there. And he was 6 at the time. They took him by ambulance to the hospital, and I was waiting there, of course. And when we got to the hospital, one thing it was very strange. When Arlen jumped out of the ambulance with Travis, I remember looking at him across and saying, who did it? Like, because I knew that he had been run over at that point and everything. I said, who did it? And he told me, he said her name. And as soon as he said her name, I felt a relief. And, you know, a lot of people don't understand this, and they still think that I'm going to have an epiphany one day and be angry at her. But I actually felt a relief then, because I knew that this was one of my best friends at the time. I knew she absolutely loved my son. And you have to understand, down at that lake lot, there was people that would drink and drive down the place. And I can literally remember thinking, I don't have to worry about that. I don't know if I'm a good enough person to handle somebody who had been driving, running over my son. But her, I knew she loved my son, and this was purely an accident. So it took that whole level away from me. I was fortunate in that way that I got to, you know, it just was this relief. So we went in, everybody starts arriving at the hospital, of course, family and friends and everything. And it's emotional, and the doctor's in the emergency room. And then our doctor came out and told us that he had indeed passed. And you know, it's a small town, so even the doctor, he had just moved to town. This was his first posting, and I had even helped him and his wife find their house, because I was selling real estate at the time. So I had helped him and his wife sell their home, or buy their home there. So, you know, it was traumatic. Everything was traumatic. And so he came out and he told us he had passed. And of course, as you can imagine, there was screaming, there was crying, everybody was like, it was a disaster. I don't even know how long it took, but they ushered us into the room where Travis was. And I remember seeing him on the bed, and he's still got the tubes down his throat, and, you know, he's dirty, and he's got like a tire mark, you know, on his shirt and stuff. And of course, like I said before, he was still wearing a diaper, so I could smell urine. And I was like, and we're in the room, Arlen's at the head of the bed, and he's like a disaster. He's crying. I know my mother-in-law, my father-in-law were in the room. My mom was in the room. And I can just remember looking at him, and I'm on the side and I'm sort of rubbing his hand, and I just wanted everybody to get out of the room. I wanted to clean him up. You know, as a mom, I wanted to wash him and change his clothes and change him and just clean him up. And I was starting to feel this panic come over me when that happened. And then all of a sudden, I say I was blessed with the most incredible gift that any mother could ever get. And it's, you know, at this time, but he's laying there, and all of a sudden I literally saw or sensed, I felt his spirit body or his soul lift from his physical body. And it just sort of hovered for a second over his body, and then it sort of wavered and just moved to, and I must have looked crazy because I'm looking up into the corner of the room just like a baby would, you know, like when they're little and looking at spirit. But he just sort of lifted and moved up to the corner of the room, and I'm looking at it, and it stopped there for a second as if to say, you know, goodbye, mama, you know. Oh, and it was just, and then it just dissipated. The energy just dissipated. And this calm came over me that was so incredible that I just went and sat in his chair in the room, and I just observed from that point. I could see his body, but I was calm. And I say it was such a gift because it was at that moment that I recognized, I always knew that we were spiritual beings, and I always had this thought that there was something else out there, but it wasn't until that very moment that I felt and really knew the difference between the physical body and the spiritual body. So I consider that a gift to this day, and I think that's what sort of started me on my path forward of, but it helped me through all the grief to be that strong person. I actually smiled through his funeral because I just, that euphoria that I had, that calmness that I had, I cried. Yeah, I cried for days, and, you know, there were moments, but there were moments where I was reminded of that. And that blessing, that gift that I was given carried me through, you know, the funeral. It carried me through those days, and it just gave me a different awareness that I'm glad to still have today. I still have today, and I know it's there. So yeah.
Diane, I know that it's been, 20 years since
20 years. Yeah.
Travis passed, and I'm sorry. I'm deeply sorry about your loss, but you talk about it in such a calm voice right now, and I understand why, but were you this calm at the time? Were you hysterical? I just, a parent should never be predeceased by their child. That's the most difficult loss anyone can go through. So how really were you in those moments, and how did people react to you if there were moments of calm? Did they think you were in shock, or tell us about what that was like?
I think that, you know, people were in shock. Family was amazing. And I have to say that family was absolutely amazing. They were, you know, supportive and around, and this strange thing happens when people, you know, have a tragedy. People just want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Just want to be around, and they don't know what to do, but they want to be there. I had one friend walk in with a box of Kleenex and just hand me a box of Kleenex. That's all he could do and muster, you know, into the house. We had the pizza delivery, you know, our favorite pizza place came with 10 pizzas and walked in the door and just handed 10 pizzas for all the people there. You know, like a small community, and you have a lot of support. I remember my dad, who doesn't, you know, he's a farmer. He doesn't express himself a lot, but I would always catch his eye, and he'd just be looking at me like, are you okay? Are you okay? You know, so I had a lot of support. I cried a lot. I woke up in the middle of the night, my pillow would be soaked. So I had been crying in my sleep. Like I would just be woke up, and it'd just be, you know, and we were numb. We, we're thankful. So you go through these emotions where you're thankful for all the help, you're feeling the love and the support, and you're grateful. And then you have these things that you have to do. You have to plan the funeral. You have to, you know, I had 2 little boys that I had to still turn around and go, we had to tell them that they're not going to see their brother. You know, life continued on even in those moments. And, so yeah, it was hard, and I'm not going to say like I went through some really horrible days. We still do. It's 20 years, but we call them trav days in our house, and every once in a while something will trigger, and we'll just have a trav day. We'll have trav moments, whatever it is, you know. And but we, as a family, we all know that, and maybe that's part of it, because he did have disabilities, because he did have pain in his life, because he did have some tragedy before this, that, you know, part of it is thinking he doesn't have to live through that. So that's part of helping us too with it, you know, where he is now and my connection to him now. He's in a good place. Where else would a mom want their child to be but safe in the arms of God, as they say, right? He's feeling no pain.
Before we get to that, did you share with your husband or anyone else what you felt sitting beside Travis in his final moments, or did you keep that to yourself?
Well, actually, it was my father-in-law that brought that up, because he noticed in the room, like I said, Arna was so distraught. He was in his own space at that moment. And you know, so in the room, we're all going through our own emotional sort of upheaval, you know, and stress. But it wasn't until a couple weeks later we were at my in-laws, where my father-in-law said, so what happened to you in the room? Like your energy just shifted and all of a sudden you just sat in that chair and you were just calm. Like you went from panicked to calm. So he's very intuitive. I come from very intuitive families. So he recognized that in the room, and you know, it's sort of, he was, because I think he was looking at everybody and making sure everybody was okay, and he really noticed that. So that's when I shared with the whole family at the table what had happened. Then
how did they react to you?
they were good. They were good. My husband has always told me, Diane, you don't see things the way other people do. And his family is always very open and just, you know, I think the biggest thing, and I think we've talked about this before, Carrie, where I come from families that didn't have any religious sort of indoctrination. Mm-hmm. Both of them were open to just whatever is whatever. You know, they all believed in kind of this spiritual higher power, but they didn't have any indoctrination. They didn't have ideals. So it was very easy for everybody to go, oh, well, that's cool. That's great that happened to you. You know, there was no pushback on it.
Okay, so before we dig into those realities and those feelings and senses and that acute awareness in you, how did you react to your best friend and what happened with that relationship?
With my relationship with
your best friend?
With Source, or
where she ultimately was the person responsible?
With my best friend. Oh, you know, with my best friend, yeah. At the time, we had an argument just before this. So at the time, we weren't really talking to each other, but we spent a lot of time after the accident. And the funny thing is, what happened in our community, our husbands played hockey together. We were in a very close-knit group. And what I found through all of this is that people would rally around victims. People rally around victims. And she has, you know, a very victim mentality, I believe. And I still believe in some ways she does. And what happened was our whole group of friends sort of rallied around her. I remember one person coming to me, I think it was the day before the funeral or the day after the funeral. I think it was before, it was like the day after he died. And I remember a group of friends that we'd have coffee with and stuff, and there was 3 or 4 of them, and they came to me, and I'm crying and I'm upset, and they came to me and they said, you know, we know you're going to be okay, you're strong, you can handle this, but we're really worried about Lynn. Oh, I shouldn't be saying her name. But anyway, we're really worried about her. We're really worried how she's going to do this. So when you can you go see her? And I thought, okay.
Oh my gosh.
I thought, okay, that's great, guys. Thanks. I know where we stand now a little bit. You know, it was kind of and I had that same nurse that was on when Travis passed. She came to my house and she said the same thing. She goes, you're strong. I know you're going to get through this, but I really need you to go see her. I don't think she's doing very well. And I remember thinking, this was my son that passed. Like, just give me a minute here. Like, give me a minute. I love this person, and I'm thankful that I don't have to hate her through this, but she is responsible for this. So give me some time to breathe here. You know, so I was very aware of all of this while it was happening, and just this rally around. And I found that even got worse over time. So my husband and I actually, and myself, I had to really pull back from that group of friends. I still, you know, think that they're wonderful people and everything, but I had to pull back from that group because I just found that every time I said, and we were very different people, this friend and I, so we often had disagreements about things. We were friends, but we saw the world in a different way. And so, you know, even being on school boards or things over the years after this, every time I would bring something up in opposition to what she was thinking, people would rally. I would get phone calls, angry phone calls, emails saying, you're just saying that to be mean to her, or you just can't let it go, or, you know, why are you being so nasty? And I'm thinking, I just have a different opinion. It has nothing to do with what happened, but people didn't see it that way.
That's unfortunate. I'm sorry that you've had to go through that because the loss was yours. And I'm sure that will stay with her forever, without a doubt, in her mind and in her heart. But I wish you would have had more people rallying around you. But as you mentioned, this unbelievable loss opened some unbelievable doors for you. And I want to move into that about your work as a medium, because I want to ask with this question, were you aware of these abilities, or your ability to tap into the other world before Travis passed? Was any of that, because you said your husband said to you, oh yeah, you see these things, you feel these things. Did that start before, or did it come on in full force after Travis was died?
I think, well, I know that I always, ever since I was little, could see things before they happened. I wasn't aware that I was seeing things before they happened. It's not like a vision would come, but I would just know things were going to happen and progress the way that they did. I always say I was a know-it-all as a child, and that got me in a lot of trouble because people would be like, well, why do you think you know everything? And I'm like, but to me, it just felt like, doesn't everybody see what's happening here? Like I didn't recognize it as being something different from what other people experience, because that was how I was. I didn't know that other people couldn't see a couple steps ahead. I always laugh. I say when I was on the hockey board, it got me in a lot of trouble because people would come with agendas, and I could see they'd come with one thing, and I'd be like, but I could see 2 or 3 steps ahead why they were doing what they were doing. So then I would be like, and people always say, why are you always being the devil's advocate? Why are you always, they didn't say that, or they didn't do that. And I'm like, well, can't you understand what they're doing here? Like, so I could see steps ahead. But I thought everybody could. This is how I was born. So I just assumed that everybody in the world could do that. I didn't recognize, and it wasn't until my husband was saying to me, you see things differently and over time. And then after, of course, Travis's accident, I wanted to learn more about my spiritual connection. It just sent me on that sort of trajectory just to learn everything I could spirit. Like I said, I didn't come from a religious background. So I just I grabbed every book I could and about mediumship and psychic abilities. I wanted to connect with him. I had connected with him at that time in the hospital, so I wanted more. I wanted to learn how to do that again. And I thought, well, if I can do it once, I should be able to do it to that level again. So I just started reading everything and learning the language of mediumship, learning the language of psychic abilities. And what I learned is that I'd been doing it all along. I just didn't realize that other people weren't. That's the difference. It's not like I had an awakening. My awakening was that not everybody is as in tuned.
I know you described this as your normal all your life. You just weren't acutely aware of it. But did any part of it scare you?
Never. Never. Because that would be like, even in the room that day, it was more of a blessing than anything to have that connection. It's kind of like you have a voice. It doesn't scare you to talk, right? It's just who I was. And so it didn't scare me. And the thought of connecting at that time was so exciting to me. When I really started to be aware of wanting to do it on purpose and consciously, at that point, it didn't scare me because I was looking forward to it. I wanted it.
So how did you embrace this on purpose? And what I mean by that is become a full-fledged medium where someone can pay you for your work, because there's always the issue of credibility, or what are your credentials attached to this? So clarify that for us, and how you become an energy worker, one that does have credibility in the public's eyes.
Well, through this whole process of learning things, I found out about this lady that was doing a mediumship workshop in Grand Prairie. So I thought, well, I'm going to take this workshop and see where I'm at. So I go to this workshop, and what I found out was that I'd already been doing all the things that she was teaching people to do. And, that was kind of an epiphany for me. It was kind of opened up, and like I say, me realizing that not so much that I was having an awakening. My awakening was that other people weren't as caught up as I was. So, that workshop kind of just put it into, I guess it's solidified to me that I was doing something that not everybody could do. So then from then, the credibility comes from, I remember having a conversation with a family member who is a social worker. And she said, of course, you know, she's gone through all the courses and done a lot of education. And she says, who are you to work with people with grief? Like, you don't have any education. And I said, who are you to talk to anybody about losing a child? You've never lost one. So I guess my credibility comes from the fact that I've lost somebody. So I have an opinion, and I have, you know, I connected to this source, and, you know, so I know my worth, and I know my credibility comes from that. So I never worry about it. Yeah, there's lots of workshops, and I go to workshops all the time because, you know, I'm always learning and exploring and like to be around like-minded people. So yeah, I do all the workshops, and I you know, I've got certificates from all these workshops that I've attended or anything. They sit in a drawer. They really don't mean anything to me because, you know, I always say my connection comes from source. My connection comes from God, creator, whatever you want to call it. It's all the same to me. My connection comes from source. So I just go there, and I know that I'm worthy to do what I do.
So I need to ask this question, and it comes with all due respect, but what about for all the people who think that mediumship and being a psychic is a whole bunch of hocus pocus? How do you respond to that?
Well, you know what? People believe what they believe, and you know, there are a lot of people in this world that have been taught to believe certain ways. You know, our environment teaches us certain ways, how we grow up, and what religion we're taught at a young age can give people a lot of ideas. And I don't worry about it. You know, I just tell people, but I have had a couple of people ask me, you know, and ask me how I can believe it, or a couple of people have said, oh, that's just bull. And I'm like, okay, well, cool. And I go on my way. They're limited thinking. I don't go there. I don't get into those arguments. And you know, the couple of people that have come to me and said, I don't believe what you do, but have not come to a reading, right? They're not even enough to come to a reading to see what I do, but they have an opinion about what I do. And to those people I say, oh, don't worry, one day you'll know. We'll be sitting in heaven all together. We'll have a chat, and then I'll talk to you about it. You know, right now, I'm not going there with.
I love that response and how you're processing that information and owning that in your own way, because you know what you see and you feel. So in that regard, give us a glimpse into that world. What do you see and feel as a medium? And does Travis come to visit you?
Well, that was another blessing I had in doing the work. When I first started, after that workshop that I took, I went home and I said, you know what, I'm jumping in with both feet. And I literally, Facebook's a beautiful platform where I just went on one day and I said, okay, guys, this is what I'm doing. This is how I'm doing it. And if you want a reading, I'm doing them for a while. I did them free. And I said, if you don't agree with what I do, then feel free to, you know, unfriend me at this point, but this is who I am. And I just jumped in like that. And I had, I think, 40, 50 readings in the first couple months. People messaged me right away wanting readings. So I jumped in hard right at the beginning.
Wow.
And so the readings, when I do a reading, my biggest, there's like, you've heard of clairvoyance is probably the most popular, where you can see things, clairaudience, where you can hear things. You know, I'm claircognizant. So like I said before, I'm a know-it-all. So information just gets dropped to me. I just know things. So, but I do see things and I do hear things. So when I do a reading, I sort of bring that all in together. And what I do, it's like dialing, you have an energy, I have an energy. We all are energy and vibration. That's scientific, we know that. So it's just like I tune into the energy of the person that I want to connect with. So I'm just dialing into their energy. You know, our thoughts are energy. We create our own reality. You know, that's a whole other subject, but of my belief that we do create our own reality, and every thought we have creates a vibration. Our thoughts are vibration, our thoughts are energy. So all I have to do is just tune into the energy. And it takes some practice, but I think I do it really well. And I just tune into somebody's vibration. I lift my energy and my vibration in order to do, mediumship is different than psychic. Psychic energy is when I'm just tapping into your energy and we can have a conversation about your thoughts and dreams and what's going on in your life. Where mediumship, in the simplest way, is I'm connecting to people that have crossed over in the now, where they are now, not where they were, and not the energy of who they were as on the physical plane, but where they are in that non-physical plane. And yes, Travis does work with me now. I get to spend a lot of time with Travis. I always tease that I get to spend more time with him than I do my other sons, because my youngest son is married and has his own life, and my oldest son does his own thing. But Travis, I can just call him up anytime. And I'm going here because this is where he usually stands, right behind me here. And I can feel him when he comes in, and I can feel his energy. So yeah, there isn't much of a separation anymore between us.
So if you're doing a reading for someone, can you see people in the room that is from, that your client's past, or what do you see in here?
Yes, and when I first started doing this, I saw full-on figures, full-on people, and which was really exciting. And it took a lot of energy to do that. And that sort of dissipated and that sort of faded after a time. And I just sort of got more of a sense of them after time. And I can get to that point where I see them when I need to. And I can, but it's more of a knowing, just a vibration that comes to me now rather than a full on. And I asked Travis one time when I was meditating, and I had a conversation with him why I did that. And he said, because you don't need it, and it takes too much energy to get to that full on vision. It takes more energy than them just telling me or just giving me the information. So I recognize that now, and I can still see things, and oftentimes I'll just have images pop into my head, and I'll see them. I'll hear things all the time. And when I'm in a full-on reading with somebody, I'll see, hear, feel, know, it all comes at me at different energy.
I think one of the biggest concerns, I've heard this in people that see mediums or psychics regularly, is if you can see something tragic in their lives. Has that ever happened to you, where you saw them dying or something horrible happening to them? And have you ever warned someone in that regard? I wonder how that all works in your world.
Well, that's up to the person that's doing it. Myself, I actually sat down when I really started getting into this, and I wrote a contract out with my guides, my spirit team. I actually have a written contract that I said, this is what I'm willing to serve, and I want to do this work. I think it's important, but this is what I'm willing to do. So I wrote a contract, and one of the things I put in there is, if I'm doing a reading for somebody, I don't want to know about a tragedy unless I can change the energy of it, is the way that I put it. So if there's a specific reason why I need to tell that person, otherwise I don't want that responsibility. I don't. I do, and I have control over my energy, and I have control over my connection. So I just choose not to go there. I choose not to go into that space, because I think that that's between the person and it's their journey, what's happening. And I can give guidance, but I'm very cautious of where I go with that. I don't cross certain lines, and I think that is crossing a line, unless there's a reason that I can change the energy of it or help in some way to smooth that out.
How do you know you're right? Because people can say, oh, the clients can interpret this any way they want.
Well, and there is a certain amount of that when you're talking about, but you're in their energy. Think about this, and this is what that gets me all the time when people say that. I'm like, of course you're going to interpret it, because I'm in your energy. So it's like, you've done that with a friend, right? You, or a business associate, where you are brainstorming, and all of a sudden it's like you're thinking the same thoughts, you're getting the same things coming up. Well, that's a sweet spot. That's a sweet spot with your family, when you get to that point where you're almost, you're having a conversation with your husband, and all of a sudden it's like, what he's thinking, and he knows what you're thinking, and you're in that flow of that energy. Well, you're doing just that. You're tuning into the energy, and you're on the same wavelength, so close that you're sort of meshed. So the same thing can happen when you're doing a reading for someone. You're all up in their energy. I'm on purpose, I'm tuning into their energy. So yes, there's going to be things that come up that feels like I'm just reading them, their body posture or what they're doing. And I'm like, well, of course, because it's all energy. it's all energy, and I'm tuning into them. So I'm going to tune into all of that they're bringing to the table. But I don't worry about that. I tell people when I sit down for reading, I tell them, if you want me to just sit here and prove to you that I can do this, that's fabulous. At the end of this, you're gonna walk away and say, wow, she's really good. She knew that I have a Bible on beside my bed. Big deal, you already knew that. I'm more interested in getting into deeper level stuff. I'm more interested in saying, and I tell people at the end of this, if you come to me and we don't know each other, there's things, even if we do know each other, there's things I don't know about you. And through conversation, things are going to come up that you're going to go, how does she know that? Mm-hmm. And that's enough proof, right? So I never try to prove anything. I'm like, okay, how can I help you? What do you want to know? Where can we go with this? I'm more interested in that kind of a reading.
Okay, you open that door, so I'm going to go there. And I want to go there with the unprecedented times that we are all living through right now with COVID-19. What kind of feelings and energy did you sense? Did you have feelings this was coming? What? Give us some perspective of what you experienced.
Well, when this all, in retrospect, and I say retrospect, it's only been a month, right? Like 3 weeks or something mm-hmm. that really hit. But I felt like something big was coming, but I felt it at an energetic level. And a lot of my friends that do energy work, a lot of practitioners have been feeling this energy. Like, and we've talked about it lots. I know with my friends I have, and I've been like, something big is coming. You can just feel it, some shift in the energy, and globally something is coming. And we all kind of, a lot of us kind of felt it. How it came about, none of us, I don't think, predicted it. Mm-hmm. We just knew that there was this energetic shift that was going to happen. And I think we didn't really know exactly what it was, because I don't even think the energy of it is settled. I think that it's changing every day anyway. So how do you predict what's happening? Because our thoughts and the way people react and what energy we're putting out into the universe now is creating tomorrow. So, I mean, it's hard to predict what's going. We can sort of connect to the energy of fear. You can connect to the energy of people panic. And, there's certain things that we can sort of predict and get to. But as far as, this tapping into exactly what's going on, I think it's the energy of it's changing so much that it'd be pretty hard to tap into what's going on exactly. But we knew there was a shift coming. I certainly knew. My husband said that when it happened. He goes, well, you've been telling me for 2 years that there's something big coming. Finally hit. And I actually felt that calm again. I almost felt that finally, now I can let that energy go, because I knew something was coming. And I know a couple of my friends have said the same thing. It's almost like a relief going, oh, that's what it was.
But you don't have a feeling as to when we might come out of this, or how we will come out of this as a world, as a collective?
I don't think that the door is just going to be open and we're going to walk through and it's going to be, okay, we're good now. I think it's going to be a slow process back. And I believe that we will forever be changed. I think that there are so many people sitting at home re-evaluating and adjusting their lives. I believe that we've called this in to us. I believe we've called this as a society and as a global people or humanity. We've called this in. We've called in change. We've asked for change. We weren't.
Why change of this magnitude?
But that's the energy of it. Look at how many people, just sit and think about how many people were not enjoying their lives. How many people were feeling disconnected for whatever reason, through social media, through, we were losing community. I know, I'm older than you, Carrie, but I know from when I was young to where I am now, I feel like community is not there. We used to get together with people, and now it's more about, we feel connected through social media, but we don't get together. And if we do, it's for an hour at a restaurant and you're eating and you sort of talk about the things that are going on and then you go on your way. We're not connecting. We don't have community. So I think globally, there's a lot of people putting a lot of energy out that they just were unhappy with their lives and with the extent of wanting. You can't be in a place of wanting and receiving at the same time. Those are two different energies. So I think we've been sitting in this space of wanting, and throwing it out there so much that the world's saying, okay, everybody needs to just shut up and receive now.
Mm-hmm.
I get that all the time. You know, I'll get buzzing in my ears because Spirit's trying to talk to me, and I'll be like, and then all of a sudden I'll hear, okay, shut up so you can listen. And I think that's what's happening in the world. They're saying,
Wow.
everybody just stop for a minute. You're all wanting this, but you're not going to receive any of the things that you're wanting unless you slow down, shut up, and that's what we're being forced to do.
That's powerful perspective. Diane, you wrote a book about this. Where can we find the book? And is this the details of your story?
Yes, it's called About a Blue Angel, and it is on Amazon. I self-published, and that's a whole other story, I guess, for people. Self-publishing is a great way to get your book out there, but I made one big mistake. I pre-sold 100 books. I sold over 700 books on my own.
Wow.
I think 3 have sold on Amazon because I did it all in my community and sold it. If all those people had bought it on Amazon, it would have been a bestseller. But I kind of did it backwards and did it on my own. So yeah, the book is on there, and I would appreciate if people pick up the book and read it and give me some feedback on it. I love to hear what people think of our story.
And where can people find you?
DianeQuartly.com.
Spell Quartly for us.
Pardon me?
Spell Quartly for us.
QUARTLY.
DianeQuartly.com. I will say this as I wrap up, that this is our second time go around on this podcast through a Zoom call, of course. The first time, I'm not going to lie, it was crazy. The lights kept flickering and the audio, it kept cutting out. And I said to Diane, there's something wrong with your lights. They keep flickering. And you said...
I didn't see it, and I said that's just the energy was so high. I was so excited to be part of it, that the energy was so high in the room that sometimes happens. So I had to ask my team to tone it down a little bit. And this morning I sat in meditation and said, okay guys, let's make it. I'm sitting at the exact same space, exact same spot. But I asked them to tone it down and did a real grounding meditation, so my energy wasn't quite so high.
I'm blown away by it, to be very honest with you, because I kept that recording and went back and I showed my husband, and the lights were flashing nonstop. So it was an interesting experience for me. Diane, it's been such a pleasure having you venture into the inner circle and to share so openly and honestly what a difficult journey this has been, but also the peace that it's brought you and how it's put you on a new path. I wish you every success that comes your way. And I'm going to say this, I look forward to connecting with you more often. Thank you so much for venturing into the inner circle today.
Well, thank you very much. I always, like any parent, I love an opportunity to talk about my boys, my children. And, you know, with Travis, I don't have that opportunity as much anymore. So to share his story is really special to me, and the connection that we have. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Diane. Take care.
You too.